Wszystko zaczęło się od króla Jagiełły. Mała Łodzia stała się miastem, które w XIX wieku rozwijało się najszybciej na świecie. W ciągu zaledwie 60 lat od powstania pierwszej manufaktury powstaje przemysłowa, wielonarodowościowa metropolia. Jednak wiatry historii nie zawsze jej sprzyjały. To, co zniszczył los, odbudowują łodzianie. Nasza Łódź. Miasto wielkich szans. Od 600 lat w sercu Polski i Europy.
Jesteśmy Polakami. Jesteśmy niezwykłym społeczeństwem. Zawsze w obliczu wielkiego wyzwania potrafimy się mobilizować. Potrafimy stawić czoła wielkim wyzwaniom. Bo nie potrafimy stać obojętnie. Bo obchodzi nas bezpieczeństwo i przyszłość naszych dzieci. Bo wierzymy, że nadzieja zwycięża apatię, lęk i strach. Bo mimo wszelkich przeciwności nigdy się nie poddajemy. Potrafimy ciężko pracować, wspierać się i działać razem. Bo zależy nam na naszej ojczyźnie, naszym osiedlu, naszej ulicy. Bo chcemy naszych niezbywalnych praw i wolności. Bo nie oddamy naszych marzeń. Nadchodzi punkt zwrotny.
Chyba będę potrzebowała wsparcia, bo coś tutaj nie działa.
Na boku jest przełącznik.
Tak, na boku.
A ja próbowałam od dołu. No dobrze. Pragnę bardzo serdecznie.
I'd like to welcome you very warmly. So many of you will be discussing the generation bridge and counteracting social disintegration. I can see representatives of different generations, and I'm very happy about that. Our guests are Aleksandra Pawlicka, Newsweek Weekly, Poland, a journalist, Paulina Kędzierska, Młodzi o Polityce, young people about politics, Andrzej Chyra, an actor, and Dominik Kuc, the activist and the originator and organizer of the ranking of schools that are friendly to LGBTQ+. I will start with the younger generation. Paulina, what are you doing here today? Well, I'm here today because I want to discuss intergenerational dialogue, intergenerational solidarity. I wrote an article to our website, Young People About Politics, about intergenerational solidarity. I don't know how about you, but I didn't realize why this intergenerational solidarity is so important, whether it's worth holding intergenerational dialogue, whether it makes sense discussing anything with people who are older than me and are not interested in our problems. But when I started getting more in depth into the subject, I wanted to get some agents to exercise my agency. I wanted to show my generation why this intergenerational solidarity is so important, how it can counteract or moderate negative consequences of an aging society. And when I got a better insight into the problem, I wanted to learn more and more about it. And that's why I'm here today. I also wanted to share with you some studies and data about intergenerational solidarity, how it impacts our everyday lives. and that's why I want to be here and I want to discuss it. Alexandra, a question to you. Can you see in your everyday work a gap, not only between generations, but also the social disintegration, because we are living in our own bubbles? Do you mean our journalist circles or the heroes of my publications? Well, we live in a silos society, and there are different divisions between us. Well, of course, there is this sociological, political division which divided our country and created two legal realities, two media realities, because there are different media for these different silos, two systems of values, two models of a lay state and more fundamentalist state. Well, we are divided, but we have come here together not only to find out whether it's possible to build these bridges, but also to engage different generations in common activities. Because what we journalists are worried about, and we often write about it, is the subject of the latest report of the Batory Foundation, from which we may read that about this turning point, the elections that we are approaching will be decided by those undecided, which still hesitate which party to choose. And we'll be discussing it, I'm sure, which groups are those who hesitate, who are the silos or in the bubble to which we cannot reach out, and how to reach out to them. Andrzej, I studied two subjects which may seem very different and diverse. I studied law, I am a lawyer, but I also studied at an art school, and I must say that when I looked at our relations between students and our professors at the law institute and at the art school, these were completely different worlds. Do you see these bubbles of younger and older, or is it not the problem of the world of arts? Yes, Ola, you started with the divisions, but we are living in a paradigm of division. We here in Poland, maybe not only in Poland, but I think it's very strong in Poland. Old and young, women, men. This is not a political division, but we on this democratic side, where it's not religion or faith which puts our values in order. In our world without faith, without religion, we don't have a decalogue, although there are different decalogues for women, for environmentalists. We are trying, but we are still divided, and I think that these divisions, they get deeper and deeper. We are making moves towards integration, but in fact, these diverse circles, groups, genders, whatever they are, we are constantly discussing it, men or women. And the problem lies probably in our mutual respect and in treating others like partners. That's what I can see when young people come, like here we have young people in the panel. Well, it's a different generation, maybe I should use this term. So when a different generation comes, these older ones, this older generation likes it very much, and then, in fact, well, I admire you, Paulina, for a very partnership proposal for cooperation. So let's meet at the level of not emotions, but at the level of agency, concrete activity. Well, I don't have any better examples because, but I took part in the campus. I have an impression that I thought that the goal for this meeting is to listen to them, to give them this super freedom to let them speak, because we don't listen to them. We say, well, listen to us and we will listen to you, but we don't. If we treat ourselves as partners, there is no problem. Well, also in the world of arts, I think that this division was not very clear. These words were interweaving, but because recently we learned that the theater is a space for abuse. And young people at the campus told me, yes, theater is a place for abuse. No. We developed narratives which groups used vis-a-vis each other. And yesterday, when I was listening to this concert, Anti-Wyspiański, where a diagnosis was made of a Pole, of Polish people, and this diagnosis was rather gloomy, like this voice of the turning point and the melody from this video spot. We are gloomy people. We were constantly celebrating a mess for the nation and for our homeland, and suddenly abuse, violence has become a tool in the fight for our position and for our borders, because in this psychological course offered, or discourse offered by feminist journals, but not only, these individual borders of an ego, of myself, are very clearly delineated. Well, we are using our ego, I, me, myself, that we have done, that we have got rid of we. I took part in the filmmaking of a series for Netflix, The Monsters of Krakow. I am a professor of pathology there. There are ghosts and dark forces in Krakow, and in Krakow we have to defend the world from the evil. So I played there in this production. With my students, 10 people from school, the theater schools, and it was very, and I understood very quickly that I was sort of excluded. Maybe I was trying to integrate too much. I was offering them cakes and sharing cakes with them, and I was talking to them, but mainly I focused on my job as an actor, because that's my main focus when I'm making a film. And suddenly a joke that they were sharing with each other provokes a completely different response in me, and that's my practical experience. So I ended up in the category of grumpy old man, that's but I also called them overdoing activists, And I have my impression is that at the time when we should integrate at different levels and understand that this is our common interest and our common world, and we are suddenly playing games on details, and this disintegration. And I think that these voices like yours, they are very necessary, but they are in minority, like in our tour the Constitution. Well, we have eminent lawyers, but we have just one van traveling across the country, and wherever we go, there are people, of course, white collar workers. But do you think that in the countryside, in small towns, villages, these people come to meet us at the tour of Constitution, retired people, while the young people, when they see maybe those elderly people and the word Constitution, which has been ridiculed and disregarded completely in the official public discourse, while it's worth reading, at least the first two chapters. So my response to it is that disintegration in our democratic community, democratic circles, is so deep. We are building our identity on contrasts, in contradiction to others to whom we want to preach or to whom we want to impose certain conditions. That happens, but we need, well, that's as much as I wanted to say.
Jak już jesteśmy przy tych warunkach i
Once we talk about principles and conditions, now I'd like to ask you, in your work, you take care of schools, as well as some suicidal practices. How do you find it possible to build an intergenerational bridges in an institution such as a school that, let's say, has been prepared by adults for young people? Is it at all possible? I think that in each school is a microcosm that reflects a variety of social relations that we can see. We've heard here about the disintegration. Within a statistical school in Poland, it will be very visible. First of all, let's remember that stereotypes are responsible for disintegration, including intergenerational stereotypes. What do young people about older generations? Okay, grumpy old people. Okay, what do older people think about young generations? Okay, it's full of entitlement, so on and so forth. Now, such stereotypes created between generations lead to disintegration, and consequently young people and teachers, parents, other people, they don't work in partnership. And school is not built on a partnership, because the teachers, since the very beginning, are supposed to be superior to pupils. But if we enter this pathway from primary school to secondary school, high school, and university, also very often hierarchical institution, we kind of intuitively learn this approach. Since the very beginning, there is no partnership. The teacher is supposed to teach us, give us some knowledge that young people don't find necessary, useful, and that they cannot use it just because it should be really, the curriculum should be changed. When they ask the parents, why do I learn this? Oh, because you need to pass your high school exams. You need to be able to be accepted to a good course of study. This doesn't build partnership because this doesn't create a good pathway. Why do I need to learn biology if I'm interested in, acting, for instance? It's impossible to build a partnership. What I think about how to counteract this phenomenon is what we said was solution orientation. We need to realize that these generations may learn a lot from one another, because we've seen that there are a lot of issues interesting to different generations. For young people, it will be climate, human rights, mental health, and for older generations, these could be democracy, free media, courts of law, and those issues that have attracted people since 2015. It's not a bad situation, but this is just the basis on which generations can learn from one another. At least part of the people, let's say, generation of teachers can understand how important human rights and mental health is important. And others may understand how free media and democracy build our civil society. And perhaps they will go to the polls in the last sentence. In both generations, of course, they have their problems. The young generation, they're radicalized, they vote for Confederacja to a large extent, and the older generation largely vote for Law and Justice Party. Okay, so speaking to what you said, okay, the young generation finds the climate important, the mental health. That is also a kind of stereotype. Now, I'm from a different generation. Okay, and for me, myself, the climate is incredibly important. Now, I'd like to tell you how we can translate this into action to find common grounds, common issues. Once we find a common issue, we can break through a lot of barriers, work together. We have this problem today that we're not sure how the young generation is going to vote, because where we are here today is the result of 2015, when the young people voted for cookies as an anti-systemic party and the Law and Justice Party as a party of change. And 4 years later, perhaps they understood it wasn't the best change they expected, and young people, say 18 to 25, largely voted for Law and Justice. Today we hear that quite probably they won't go to the polls. Okay, in 2020, young people went to the polls because there was a wake-up call because of a terrible attack on LGBT from President Duda. And quite a lot of them went to the polls under the circumstances. And right now we're facing a question mark of what choice will be made by young people in 2023. Now, research shows that they're not sure whether to go to the polls, and young women especially, they don't know whether to go to the polls. Well, we have had the largest demonstrations on abortion after the tribunal's decision on abortion. The question is whether this great outrage, anger, let's say our fight against taking our rights away from us. So is it possible or not to translate it into votes. I talked to Marta Lempart, who is the head of Women's Strike, the main organization for a long time. She was against to participate in a pro-voting campaign, but as she heard that two opposition parties promise to legalize abortion up to the 12th week if they win, and only alliance of civic platform with the left can do it in the parliament. She's preparing a campaign that's going to start over the weekend. I think that the politics is not that important, even if you don't care about political parties, if you find them cowards and tricksters. For the first time in the Third Republic of Poland, we can get 231 green dots for abortion. Let's get united for this. Let's go and vote. We went out in the street. We carried out enormous protests. Right now, 70% of Polish people, irrespective of people, support abortion. Let's pull it through. Let's legalize it. This can only be done if we get 231 green dots in the parliament. This can be done with all issues. We can look for common ground, common issues. My children are older than you. I was opposed to a situation where other people told me what should be important for me, how I should live, what my happiness should be. My mother had plans for my career until 1980. Once I finished high school, I took a completely different path, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a lot in common, that we can talk to one another, and that's possible to be translated into all kinds of human relations. Also, speaking about this vital issue, okay, once we lose elections, we leave the country. Why should we leave it? So I believe that this search for common ground, for common issues, rather than great bridges. We do not have to follow one way, one guideline. We just need to find a common ground, and then we will split and go, each of us, their own way. Okay, so the common goal, that's a very important point. Now I'd like to ask Paulina. Now, this year, you are participating in a Tour de Constitucja, a movement. If you haven't heard about this project, it's scandalous. Okay, I'm joking, but the Tour de Constitucja is touring the country, talking to people in larger and smaller towns, mostly smaller ones, about the constitution and rights and voting rights. Mr. Hojda is the author of this project. This year we invited young people to talk about politics. What are your feelings? Is it possible to bear us? Or yes, it is possible. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's doable. I think that what the most important thing I learned in Tour de Constitucja, the Constitution Tour, is that I usually meet with older people. So you're treading a fine line, indeed. And the most important thing, what changed within me after this tour, is that finally I met people to whom I owe where I live in a free Poland. And the two turning points for me in this tour was meeting you as my closest friends, but Danuta Przywada and Wojciech Chmielnicki, and meeting them and seeing what their actions impacted where we are right now, that thanks to them that Poland is different than previously. And it has changed a lot in me, and even though I already had written a paper on intergenerational solidarity, I felt greater motivation. I wanted more to do something for Poland. I want to strengthen this intergenerational dialogue because I felt I owed something to them. They fought for free Poland. I can't stay at home and do nothing. I need to talk to people who are older than myself, who have experience, to understand what they think and translate it into my own actions. And I believe that this tour has given me this motivation for doing more, especially that I met those people, I wanted to work with them. I feel great on the tour. I'd like to speak to what was said here, voting spots. Of course, all of us, we need to attend and go to the polls, but I haven't participated in any elections yet. The previous one, I wasn't 18. People do not understand what's the ballots and so on and so forth. They have poor knowledge. We can go on tour, we can educate people without a systemic change, without changes in education on voting rights or civics. I remember when I went to high school, only one chapter was devoted to elections. There wasn't anything that would translate into where I go to the polls. I can't remember anything from that lesson, so we don't have any practical lesson on elections. That won't be done by NGOs, but conducted by teachers who are trained, who have the right knowledge, and young people will know what election is. How can I vote? What's the DONT system? What are the ballots and mandates? And we need to focus on a situation where in small towns you have children who have one lesson in civics over 4 years, and they don't really know what elections are about. These practical things. Okay, you could bring some voting, some ballots, show children how you count them and so on and so forth, and only then people would understand how important it is to go to the polls. I think it's impossible under Minister Czarnek.
Dlatego czekamy jeszcze ten.
Well, that's why we are waiting these 4 weeks to come. Well, very briefly, yes, I can see, yes, I can see it, but because speaking of school, I'd like to come back to you, Dominik, this microcosmosis that you have mentioned. Paulina has just told us that we have just the theory, which is often boring. I'm a lawyer, but honestly speaking, from the lessons of civics or civic education, I learned nothing. I usually didn't take part in these classes because they were really very, very boring. So can we translate this microcosmos of a school into real worlds which don't teach theory but identify common goals? Is it possible under this system? Yes, of course it is, but by changing the system, because now the situation is more or less like this, with these micro universes, or this micro universe of a school. They are founded on on people. So this anti-discriminatory, climate-related education rests on teachers, headmasters who want to do it, even though this is not supported by the system. They are going to do it. So they want to have proper classes in civic education, and you can have them if there is a teacher and a headmaster who supports it, and a teacher who can convey this knowledge in an interesting way. But in practice, even though we may find 200 or maybe 2,000 people, teachers and headmasters like that, still there are many micro-universes around. Well, the change is possible, but it is possible when we engage all the system to build civic education, starting from the very beginning, from the primary school. I think this is the next common point, that we have in common, because I fully agree that we should look for these things that join us. I'm not even trying to say that there are no common issues for us. I think that this civic education is one of them, and this is good and beneficial to teachers and to future generations of pupils. But on the other hand, a system where we have teachers and pupils, currently these two groups are oppressive vis-a-vis one another. Today, a young person in many schools in Poland don't find any psychological help at school. Over 400 municipalities don't have any possibility to ensure that. And of course, the problem of remuneration, which has a lot to do with respect. So there are aspects that have to be changed, and this change must take place across the country for primary, secondary schools, because we want to teach young people critical thinking, problem solving, because only then will we be ready to build civic society. If we invest in education now, in 12 years, after the whole educational cycle, we will know that we are having, or we are coming closer to a truly civic society. From what you have said and from what we hear, education, we keep on saying, reach out to the youngest, to kindergartens. But right now, I think that it's true to say that if you want to encourage people to do something, you should be encouraged, or you should show enthusiasm. So these teachers should start burning this fire of enthusiasm and transfer this fire to their pupils. Well, this is maybe the turning point. Well, I think that there are many teachers who are already burning, or they are on fire. They showed it in front of the Ministry of Education, but that calls for a systemic change. Well, we have 200 or 2,000 teachers, enthusiastic and burning, but it will happen only here or there, and of course it may be, well, a teacher may be on fire while the headmaster may be a queen of ice, so nothing will happen. So the change of the system is anyway necessary. Yes, I wanted to add some comments. When we speak of the goal, where these goals are seen in a rather unclear future, good advice that we should improve education, we have to improve how our school works. But in a month's time, there are elections, parliamentary elections in Poland. Well, under the current Minister of Education, nothing will change. So our wonderful ideas will not give us much. We should seek solutions for today. And all questions asked here at these games relate to what's happened right now. I'm afraid we are at these games identifying our perspective, forgetting where we are now. So this temperature, this is the video that we have just seen. Well, we see it constantly in this rather ambiguous matter. You say 231 green dots. No, I believe to us we should aspire for 296 votes in the parliament, because this is only then will we be able to reject the veto of the president and change something. What are we thinking of? Will be we will want to act, we want to do something, and will be stopped every time? Well, this division has made us completely divided in these elections. Well, those politicians, if they came here, they would learn how the votes are counted and what the DONT system is about. We have a month to explain people what it means. Well, it is this claim, but those who disseminate knowledge, who have much more money and they have broader impact than the constitutional tour, the constitution. So I think that we should seek for solutions for today. The fact that we have to change the system of education, we've known that for years. Well, I'm happy to hear that from the politicians. Yesterday, Aleksandra Gajewska told us what the new school should look like, how it should evolve, because we are renovating or silver plating the reality. No, we should be ready with all these changes. We should win this 276 or 7 votes in the parliament. Well, Judah may always be there. I don't know what's there in this language, intergenerational language. In Radom, where I went with Professor Łętowska, a famous Polish lawyer, on the tour of Constitution, there were we and the young, well, the young and the old, and she said, yes, well, but it's not only that we are listening to each other. Yes, our language is different. We speak different languages. Well, what is stereotype? What is not? Who is interested in the environment and in independent courts? But we need to understand which subjects are at the top of the agenda in different groups, and that's how we target this content addressed to them. And this language is very difficult, because this language has become increasingly more closed. Maybe we are using words and terms like society, our Polish society. We've heard that it's incredible and that we are ready to fight. Well, we'll see. We hope that on the 1st of October we will see that, because only this impetus or this can give us all that is this 277 votes in the parliament. Or these are the goals, because then we will not think whether we will fall down or not, but we'll just go ahead. Well, I heard yesterday people saying, well, I'm afraid, well, it's 80% sure that we will lose. I didn't tell you everything about Wyspiański yesterday. A very poetic and clear thing, and 3 young guys who go away from the place. 5 minutes later, one says to the other, what the fuck they are talking about? Well, they always say things like that. And if I heard it in the Piotrkowska Street in Łódź, I would smile. But here, I heard it here, and that means that that the damage done to authorities or to artists, well, we are doing that by this, theater, there's a space for abuse campaign. Artists are not heard. What are they saying? They have nothing interesting to say. I'm not saying that all artists are worth listening to, but some are, and sometimes they make it easier for us to understand where we are. I bought a volume by Marcin Świetlicki, and at the meeting in Radom, I opened it and I found a poem in June 1986. 1986, you know what the date is about. I often pass Majdanek. It's hot, people are getting sunburned on the grass. Some people go through the through the fence, and they feel even more secure at Majdanek, which was a concentration camp during the Second World War. February 89. Awkwardly and without faith, although women praise it, we cannot trust in these cases. They want something different, but I give them something warm. So I give it to them, a package of cigarettes that ensures my independence, stones, batons, balance, universe. I can step aside and move independently. I can go inside and move without faith, not being in the very center after all. So I think that these two poems that speak of the times that have already passed. Yesterday we heard about the studies carried out in closed structures, social, cultural and anthropological studies of these bubbles are very interesting, because then they can be translated into the models of open societies. So the researcher told us how our attitude to reality changes when you are in a closed institution. Well, the perception changes, but when we look where we are after these 8 years, 4 more years, 12 years, children who started a school at the age of 7, they have right now graduated from their primary school. So they spent their whole primary school in the environment of law and justice, language, politics. I don't know what they understood as democracy, freedom. There is a total chaos. There are simple solutions given by God. So everyone is finding a simple solution to a situation. But what really happens, how these societies work, I think that when I read these poems, I'm at the third stage of being in a closed institution, in a prison. Well, this Majdanek concentration camp has reminded me that sometimes being within the camp, we feel more safe than outside of it.
Konformizmu i
So we need to consider the kind of conformism and apathy that the people are in. It's individual people forming this society. Now everybody can understand it for himself or herself. So to finish this perhaps a little convoluted utterance, we need 3/5 of vote, and we should be ready for that. Rather than whether we reach the finish line or perhaps we pee our pants before. Okay, now I'd like to object to one thing that we are talking here about and what will happen in the past, forgetting what will happen in a month's time, and kind of programming our goals and tools after what will happen after 15th of October. Now, told us about very fantastic social action focused on here and now. That is a campaign on young women for them to go to the polls. That brings together different generations of people of different ages because they have one goal. Therefore, I would like to speak to what you said. Well, I wouldn't like to generalize, but looking at what's going on here overall, some people say a month is a lot of time, other people say it's not much, but still we have some time. I don't feel this. Okay, this place should provoke us to broaden our knowledge, understand reality from different perspectives. But what I miss, the only thing that we have is this, okay, perhaps let's not fight with morality. We can't do anything with that, with moralizing. It doesn't work at all. I'm waiting for a very specific issues and projects that we can still do right now. Okay, let's plan it, but for the time being, let's take this step so that we could start implementing what we plan. Sometimes great things happen exactly within one day and change reality. Well, revolutions usually begin with something unexpected and are unpredictable, including the fall of communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall. It hadn't been predicted by the political scientists. These 8 years I talked to Andrzej as 8 graduating classes of doctors, lawyers, and they have a different point of view. Now, today's world is a world kind of prepared by the ruling party, but I'd like to talk about something else. Speaking to the subject matter of this panel, I'm not sure if you realized that Professor Strzembosz 4 days ago published a letter on the occasion of his 93rd birthday. It's an open letter to young people in which he asks them to go to the polls. He says he's not going to tell them who to vote for, but so that they voted in such a way as his experience would not have to be reiterated. I'm just going to flesh it out, but this experience is something that differentiates between generations. As Paulina said, it's not really your birth date, because how old you are, it's your head, how you feel, whether you can or cannot talk to one another. But experience is something that, well, depends. It can is kind of set us up the wrong way, but we can tell other people what we lived through. Strzembosz wrote that he was born before the Second World War, Hitler's time, before Stalinism, communism, before People's Republic of Poland. He remembers judges who sentenced to death members of the Home Army. He remembers hungry people in the People's Republic of Poland who were fed by the government, and in this way the authorities bought their support for a long time, and sometime later those very people toppled those authorities, because it was largely workers who toppled the government. So there are some unpredictable events, and if we find such convergent points, so then perhaps a 93-year-old judge of the Supreme Court can meet an abortion activist, and they can have the same objective goal, or they can meet as a young person who says he's not interested in public activity, but he who wants to live in a country where nobody tells him or her what to do. Or maybe he can meet a businesswoman who doesn't want the state to thwart her business plans and try to destroy her business. So we have a lot of points in common. We can find more, and we can go and get not 231 but 277 mandates. Sorry for my failed metaphor at the end with peeing your pants before the finish line. It shouldn't happened, but I believe this election is already won by us. I think that what happens on the 1st of October happens, then we will win. So important it is how many of us go to the polls. We need to have a lot of polls, because large parties have a big bonus. So those who decided to go on their own, they will be it will be difficult for them to pass the threshold. Yeah, what you mean is the 15th. No. What I mean is the ignition point that will bring us out of this this strange dance. Okay, so the 30th of September, I'd like to invite everybody for the grand finale of Tour de Constitucja. It's near the Mermaid. The wonderful people. The 1st of October. It's another very important event. The 30th of September is very, very crucial for us to feel patriotism in our hearts. It's something that is not obsolete, but we have representatives of a young generation. Now, I don't know if you know that Dominik is also on the board of the Foundation of Congresses, now on the 15th, and a great request for you. I'd like everyone here to find among your neighbors, friends, family, one person who doesn't want to go to the polls. Please take them by the hand, convince them, and take them to the polling station. Now, many thanks to our guests, Aleksandra Pawlicka, Paulina Kędzierska, Andrzej Chyra, and Dominik Kuc. And my name is Kinga, Dagmara, Siadlak. I represent the foundation of the Federation of Democratic Movements. It's on board of
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Pan Zbigniew Hołdys.
Zgadza się. Dla znajomych Zbyszek.
Serio? Zbyszek. Nadchodzące wybory są zbyt ważne, żeby zostawić je bez kontroli. Dołącz do obywatelskiej kontroli wyborów. Zróbmy wybory bez picu.
Jestem z zawodu lekarzem. Zajmowałam się diagnostyką chorób nowotworowych.
W Białorusi zajmowałam się mikrobiologią i molekularną biologią.
Byłem nauczycielem szkoły podstawowej.
Naszym celem jest budowanie umiejętności, które są ważne na polskim rynku pracy.
Szybko nabierają takiej pewności siebie, bardzo szybko się uczą. Wszystko możliwe, kiedy starasz się.
Każdy wybór ma swoje konsekwencje.
Dziś na kazaniu o takich jak ty mówili, że to morderczynie.
A wiesz, że ta, która ci pomogła, trafi za kraty?
Trzeba mieć sumienie.
Jak mogłaś to zrobić własnej matce?
Aborcja to najgorsza zbrodnia.
Gdybym ja podjęła taką decyzję, nie byłoby cię tutaj.
Organy państwa nie będą przyglądać się temu obojętnie. Życie i zdrowie kobiety jest najważniejsze.
Stop kryminalizacji aborcji.
Kobieta decyduje.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise